Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Advanced Warfare in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about variant testing. I have put a lot of work into testing the different variant weapons, or the loot or unlock based weapons, to try and find out what each one of those little stats mean. Does damage really increase damage? What does fire rate do? If anything, how much? And some of the odder ones like handling and mobility affect things that might surprise you. We're going to talk about each one of those today. I'm not going to show the testing because that's a little bit boring. The gameplay that you're watching instead is me using the MP11 Squeaker. It's an elite variant. It has -2 on accuracy and +2 on rate of fire, which makes it very inaccurate. And the gameplay is something special. I consider it good gameplay. You might not. It's very, very, very objective-oriented gameplay, but with several special guests. I have on the enemy team, not my team unfortunately, FaZe Seabass, the co-leader of FaZe, and FaZe Slasher, who is another FaZe member. And I think they have some of their friends on their team because the enemy team plays very objective-oriented, and my team not so much. I have just prestiged in this gameplay, so I am level 1. I have no unlocks, no complete classes, no useful perks like Flak Jacket, no attachments to my weapon and anything, and I put my try-hard panties on and I try as hard as I possibly can to win this game. And that's a lot of solo capping flags and stuff because my teammates don't flag quite as much. But anyway, let's talk about the different weapon variables. First up, we have damage. Damage adds damage to the weapon, obviously. It adds it to both the maximum and minimum ranges. Now, weapons in Call of Duty do more damage up close than they do far away. That's why it'll take like 3 shots to kill up close and like 5 or 6 at a distance. The damage stat adds damage to both your maximum damage, your close, and your far away. More often than not, it's not going to affect the shots to kill on the maximum damage. That one's pretty rare. It's usually going to cause you to get 1 less shot to kill at long ranges. So, for instance, if it were the MP11 Deceiver, which has a bonus damage on it, instead of requiring 6 shots to kill at long ranges, like many of the submachine guns do in this game, it would only require 5 shots. That doesn't seem like much, but when you consider how fast you hit that 6-shot kill range, it is very, very useful. Very rarely is it going to affect the 1-shot kill range up close. It'll do it maybe a little bit more in hardpoint. And one interesting thing about damage is that it also changes range, because your bullets, I use the word drop off, but their damage decreases over range. So if you increase their maximum and minimum, you're also increasing the amount of range that you have per shots to kill. So your damage is going to scale your range in a very, very practical and useful manner. Range increases range, duh, it's pretty straightforward. In most of my tests, the effect was extremely minor, like only like a meter or two, like a couple of feet, very, very small. Then again, I didn't have very many good weapons with like really huge plus and minus range stats to test without also changing the damage, because most of the variants do have plus and minus various different things, and I don't like it when they interact with each other, because testing multiple variables at once is bad science. But range does change the range. In my experience, not a lot. Maybe we need a lot of points. Next up, we have accuracy. Accuracy does indeed change the recoil, and what I found is that it varies a little bit from gun to gun, but each point is essentially about 1/4 as effective as a foregrip. Even a weapon with a full 3 points of accuracy doesn't change quite as much as putting the foregrip on it, but it definitely is something significant and worth you keeping in mind. Fire rate is one that I can be pretty specific about. Fire rate gives you about a 15 to 20% increase in rate of fire per point. That's if you have positive. If you have negative, it's going to be -15 or 20%. However, it's not like a straight linear progression. It's not like with 3 points you're going to be shooting 60% faster. That's not how it works. Pretty much anything above 1 point, you're going to be looking at about 30-35% increase rate of fire, which is, it's colossal. Don't get me wrong. That's right on par with rapid fire or more. Then, and especially compared to some Call of Duty games. But this one I can be pretty specific about. If you see +1 point or -1 point, just figure about 15 to 20%. It's almost always in that range. Very rarely do we have any outliers, and anything more is about 30%. Changing the fire rate will also change the recoil. This is sometimes why you see ones with plus and minus fire rate and accuracy. Part of the accuracy equation is how fast you fire and how much your gun kicks per shot. Jacking up the rate of fire is going to make it kick more. That's a pretty straightforward sort of concept. Don't need to explain that too much. This was one of the surprising ones. This handling statistic doesn't change anything to do with your gun except for the hipfire spread. I thought handling would change something like your weapon swap time, your sprint in and sprint out times. Maybe handling would change your aim down sights time. Maybe handling would change, I I don't know, your flinch or something like that. But I was kind of beating my head up against the wall here, and I found out that it changes your hipfire spread. However, the changes are extremely minor. I mean, like, I had to get the two guns and compare them side by side and zoom in on Sony Vegas, or like hold each and hit Y and swap. Each point of handling is going to change your hipfire spread by maybe like 3 or 4 pixels of width on the crosshair. It's doing something with the angle, because hipfire spread is more or less conical. It's a big angle, a cone. It's super tiny. It does have an effect on weapons that are very hipfire dependent, like the SAC-3, EM1, or XMGs, some submachine guns. It can have an effect on your gameplay, but in my experience, this is not super important. I really wouldn't worry about handling on assault rifles or LMGs or anything like that. Shotguns, I guess we could also have an increase there. And one of the surprising ones is that mobility changes nothing at all. I tested mobility every single way I could think of, and I couldn't find a single thing that mobility changes. Mobility didn't change the reload times, it didn't change my run speed, it didn't change my sprinting speed, it didn't change the distance which I could sprint. I'm pretty sure that's infinite. It didn't change how far I could boost, how high I could jump, how often the boosts come back, how far I could knee slide. It didn't change my strafing speed. It didn't change how fast I aim down sights. Now, one caveat to that is I thought it did at one point change how fast my gun was aiming down sights, but the change was so incredibly minor. It was only a couple of frames, and I can chalk that up to capture card error or human measurement error, just extremely minor. It didn't change weapon swap times, sprint in and out times. I tested every single variable that I could think of, and I couldn't find anything that changed with mobility. And we tried guns, several different guns that had mobility points, and found absolutely nothing. If you guys find out what mobility does, please let me know. I'll make a whole in-depth episode on it and give you credit. But as of right now, I couldn't find beans, which was surprising, and I would tell you that if I looked as hard as I could and I couldn't find anything, that if it does anything at all, it's going to be extremely minor, and you shouldn't even worry about it or consider it when it comes to your class recommendations. The 3 big stats are the ones that are important, and the ones that you'll notice right away are, in order of importance, fire rate. That's a huge boost that directly changes your time to kill at all ranges, very important. Damage right after that, decreasing or increasing shots to kill is very important, and accuracy is also very important. Well, that's all for the in-depth part of this episode, but there's a little bit extra that I'd like to talk about at the end. It's a channel update, personal update, what's going on, what you should expect from the future. Obviously, Advanced Warfare is out, so I'm doing in-depth full swing, and you've probably noticed by now that the weapon and gun reviews haven't started. There are a couple of big slowdowns on that one. Primarily, the guy that does the gun stats every single year, Marvel 4, is generally less interested in them this year than previous years, mostly because his Advanced Warfare isn't working on PC because there is an arbitrary RAM and processor requirement and some other things like that. On top of that, there's 350 guns to get stats for, so that's a whole ton of stuff. And one thing that's some of you might find funny is that the programmers, for whatever reason, decided to put everything in Klingon. And I'm not using Klingon as an example of something that we don't understand or something that's too complicated, but the game code actually puts out to the spoken language of Klingon from Star Trek, which basically reads like gobbledygook, so everything has to be put into a translator, and then it comes out double gobbledygook, and that slows down everything. So it's going to be quite a while before we get to any like really super hard stats on the weapons. Everything's going to be hand tested from here on in. I'm going to be doing the best in-depth episodes, getting the best information and the best stuff that I can, mostly through qualitative and comparative stuff, and not a lot of quantitative until all that other sort of work is done. As far as scheduling goes, I'm going to try to have an in-depth every single day of the week except for Friday. I'm going to try to do 1 a day, and if I discover something super crazy or super important, we'll do 2 a day. Friday is going to be reserved for vlogs, for product reviews, for sponsored videos, for just something that's not super serious, not something that's in-depth or hardcore gaming or whatever. Friday is going to be my fun day where I do whatever. I usually stream on Friday, so I just throw up whatever video that just floats my boat and stream. Other than that, we're going to try to do 2 videos a day, definitely 1 in-depth every day, like I said, but I'm trying to do like 1 in-depth at 4 p.m. Eastern, and then try to do one something else about 7 p.m. Eastern. I think after this video I have a segment for my live stream. So it'll be 2 total videos per day, 1 in-depth per day. Going to be very busy here on the channel, mostly COD related, but I think we're going to be doing a little bit of block and load and a few other things. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. If you want to check out the previous video, that's going to be on the secret camo combinations, and the next video is going to be on the EXO mute device. Going to be testing that out, seeing what it does, and hopefully we'll find something fun about it. That's all for now. Drifter out.